Chapter 5. Tommy had officially been living with the Kraft family for a week, and it honestly felt longer than that. He had the same feeling with his last foster home as well, but this house was for a different reason. Here, it didn't drone on. Instead, Tommy found himself savoring every moment he had with them, lingering on his enjoyment. The house was quiet for once, and he was on his phone, holding it at an awkward angle, since his knuckles still hurt from beating the shit out of a statue. Something he very much regretted now. His room didn't share the ease he experienced in this house, though. It was still empty and didn't look lived in. No amount of posters or decorations could make it feel like home, not with the suicide prevention windows mocking him every night. All he wanted was for fresh air. He had no intention of using the window as a diving board from the second floor. "Tommy!" Wilbur burst into his room, causing him to drop the phone in his hands. "You bitch! I require your assistance," Wilbur said, grinning as Tommy tried to regain his breath. He did this occasionally, running into his room without knocking, scaring the shit out of him, ever since Tommy did the same to Wilbur. "No. You haven't even heard what I need you for." Wilbur stood straight and gave Tommy a look that would have frightened him if he didn't know how much of a pussy Wilbur was. They both agreed to never speak about the spider incident. He sighed, but let himself be pulled up from his bed and pushed into Wilbur's room. "Now, I know you like my kind of music, so I need to show you something because Technoblade is being a little bitch at the moment. How do you know I like your music? You're not very subtle at stealing my music taste in the car. Next time use Shazam or something." Wilbur laughed as Tommy's ears reddened. "Oh, you're embarrassed. Shut the fuck up." Tommy hit his shoulder and watched Wilbur display his SoundCloud and Spotify accounts on both of his computer monitors. The various Spotify playlists Wilbur created were on the side of the screen. Tommy stopped reading their titles when he got to the POV Water is Wet playlist. Who the fuck names a playlist that? "Give me your opinion on this song," Wilbur said, clicking on one of his drafted audio files. A warning, though, it's got shitty audio, courtesy of our school's recording equipment. This didn't surprise him, since he'd seen the shitty music equipment the school had. The drum kits were incomplete, and the sound of the snare made him want to commit arson, specifically in the music room. Every music lesson was hell on his ears. The song started playing, and the trumpet caught him off guard. The song was named One Day, and he liked it. Despite Wilbur's awful singing. That was a lie, but Tommy didn't want to fuel Wilbur's ego. When Wilbur paused it, Tommy frowned at him. "Is this why you guys don't have a pet?" "What?" Tommy leaned over him and replayed the first couple seconds of the song. "Who killed your cat?" "I've never had a cat." Tommy stared at him blankly. "Don't tell me this is some precise metaphor about pussy. I never want to hear that word come out of your mouth." The disgust Wilbur expressed didn't answer Tommy's statement, though. He opened his mouth to repeat himself, but Wilbur grabbed an empty can of Pringles and waved it around as menacingly as possible. "Don't think I won't hit you." Rolling his eyes at him, Tommy took hold of the computer mouse and hovered the cursor over a drafted album file. It was titled, Your City Gave Me Asthma. "What's that?" Tommy asked, wondering what the title meant. Maybe it shared the same shitty metaphors about pussy. Wilbur looked back at his computer screen. He ripped the computer mouse out of Tommy's hand and exited out of the SoundCloud account. The previous amusement he had practically drained from his face, with unease replacing it. "Don't ask about that," Wilbur snapped. There was a certain edge to his voice that left Tommy uncomfortable. He didn't expect such hostility over an album. "I'm being serious, don't." Okay, I won't. Tommy raised his hands in surrender still confused about the entire switch in Wilbur's mood. A tense silence followed as Wilbur exhaled and rubbed harshly at his face. Tommy fiddled with his hands, not sure what to do. Anyway, yeah, he began, voice uncertain. I liked the song you showed me, especially since it started with cat slander. He hoped for the strained atmosphere between them to quickly leave, and maybe for the unease in Wilbur to leave as well. Wilbur, still quiet, rubbed his face again and sighed. I take it you're more of a dog person, Wilbur said. And Tommy nodded. Good. I don't think you'd survive in this household if you preferred cats to dogs. Now that you know I steal your music, can I have a look through your playlists? At the mention of his Spotify playlists, Wilbur sat up straighter, almost as if the life returned to him. You've come to the right place for song recommendations. Tommy smiled to himself, satisfied, as a face of joy greeted him. Tommy had spent the rest of the day listening to the music Wilbur had given him, and fucking hell was there a lot. No wonder he had a band in sixth form. He was obsessed with music. After finally going through all the songs, Tommy was hungry. There was nothing against a snack before going to bed. He went downstairs and walked into the kitchen. Phil and Techno were currently in the living room, lounging on the sofas whilst watching something on the TV. Tommy stared at the screen and held back a gag as he realized what the two were watching. It was some anime. Fucking weebs. Because of this, he made sure to be as loud as possible when searching through the cabinets for a perfect snack. Techno, bothered by the noise, paused the TV. Is it possible to orphan an already orphaned child? Tommy stopped rustling a random crisp packet and flipped him off. He leaned against the kitchen island counter. You technically need to kill Phil. Never mind. Techno huffed. It's not worth it. Phil narrowed his eyes at him. I don't know if I should be offended at that or not. Techno shrugged. That's up to interpretation. Tommy frowned at the pair. The dynamic between them was different to Phil and Wilbur. With Techno and Phil, they acted more like old friends rather than father and son. It was weird. Rustling the crisp packet again, Tommy took it and some biscuits with him. He circled the kitchen island and was about to stomp his way up the stairs, but Phil, saying his name, interrupted his plans. Do you want to join us? Phil asked, waving his hand towards an empty sofa. Before Tommy could answer, Techno said, Nah, he won't like this. Which is more of a reason for us to make you watch this, but nah. Are you gatekeeping, weeb shit? He didn't know if he was using the word that the girl in English taught him correctly, but he didn't care. I'm not gatekeeping anime, Techno answered, confused. So you're gaslighting me now. Stop saying words you don't know the definition to, Phil said. I think what you just said counts as an example of gaslighting, Techno stated, his mouth upturned at the irritation present on Phil's face. Shut. This entire situation took years off Phil's life expectancy. We'll put on a simpler anime for you, Tommy, if you want to join us. If it's Death Note, I'm leaving, Techno said. Avatar: The Last Airbender. That isn't even an anime. Phil looked over at Tommy. If a word starting with the letter G leaves your mouth again, I swear. Tommy scowled, bitter that Phil knew what he was going to say. No more buzzwords, no more arguing. Tommy, sit down. He rustled his snacks annoyingly one more time, and jumped onto the empty sofa, making his dislike of watching an anime that wasn't an anime, apparently, obvious to the two. If Tommy so happened to text Tubbo in the middle of Season 1, asking if it was bad to side with a character whose mission was to kill a 12-year-old child, it wasn't anyone else's business. It wasn't his fault he liked the emo fire guy and Uncle Iroh. He woke up cold and blinded. His face ached as he lifted himself from the floor. He was in the void again. His neck twisted as he tried to find the light in the dark. The gray walls in the distance glared down at him. The once green vines bled red. At least he wasn't in the middle of the maze this time. Wrapping his arms around himself, Tommy roamed aimlessly, hoping for something to appear. A two-seated table emerged from the darkness, and as he got closer, a figure materialized in one of the chairs. The white gleam from a mask gave away who it was. Dream. There was some type of board game placed on the table, and Dream seemed to be playing it by himself. 3 colored dice and 10 playing pieces were untouched. "Why the fuck are you playing some great version of Monopoly in my dream visit?" Tommy asked, his teeth chattering as he spoke. He stopped by the side of the table. "Do not refer to the Gnosis game as Greek Monopoly. If anything, it's Greek chess." There was no edge to Dream's voice, no malice present in the exposed part of his face, which confused Tommy. He was weirdly being civil, something that was rare. "Again, why are you playing it?" "I think it would be beneficial for you if you play with me," Dream said, ignoring his question. "No thanks. I'm going to go back into the maze and figure a way out of this place." Tommy turned to walk back to where he woke up, but a hand grasped onto his left arm, brushing over his tattoo. "You don't want to go in without my presence there. You won't find a way out," Dream said, and loosened his grip when Tommy faced him again. Huffing, Tommy jerked his arm away. "All right, you egotistical dickhead. I'll play you Greek Monopoly. It's not, I don't care." Clenching his jaw, Tommy sat down and observed the board game in front of him. The rectangular board was painted gold, with blue circles at the bottom side and black circles at the top. "The aim of the Gnosis game is to get your pieces from the land of the living to the land of the dead, then back to the living," Dream stated, pointing at the different areas on the board as he explained. "What's this area?" Tommy asked, referencing the brown area in the middle. "The river Styx. It's best if you don't get caught in there." "Sounds boring." "I could instead force the void to replay all your past lives' deaths." Dream's voice sharpened, starting with Sisyphus. Tommy's body shuddered. The chair bit at his exposed arms. "Fine, no insulting your shit board game then, I guess." As Dream continued to explain the rules, Tommy tried to recover from the mere thought of possibly having to see his Sisyphus death again. He couldn't bear to think about it, but seeing it? He'd rather play a shit board game than have to watch the last person to ever love him, who tried to change and recover from their destructive behavior for him, die again, and for him to follow shortly after. The game began, and the way Dream played convinced him that this was more than just a board game to Dream. He played as if his life was on the line, with his masked eyes analyzing the board at every step his piece moved. He even threw the dice with precision, whereas Tommy just chucked them, which resulted in one of the dice falling onto the floor at some point. Dream didn't respond to any of Tommy's teasing or insults either. Dream's tactic seemed to be working, though, seeing as the masked man was utterly destroying Tommy so far. Dream had secured most of his pieces back from the land of the dead, whilst Tommy couldn't even get past the river Styx, having to restart every single time. "This is rigged," Tommy spat, annoyed as another piece died to the river. "I don't cheat," Dream replied. "I somehow don't believe you." Strangely, Tommy found himself enjoying the game for a moment, especially when one of Dream's playing pieces also died to the river Styx. But then, within minutes, Dream successfully passed through the river and secured his last piece. "That was a fun round," Dream said, a smug smile mocking him. Fun? You battered me. I didn't even get one piece back to the living. It's not my fault you always rolled into the river Styx. Dream reached over and reclaimed his playing pieces. You really are a sore loser. Not to be ageist or anything, but you're old as fuck and have played this game for millennia, Dream. You have an advantage, Tommy said, bitter. I wasn't even born when this game was made. Motherfucker, you're a god. You still have an advantage. Tommy, with his arms folded, watched Dream reset the board. I'm glad you aren't residing to suicide in this life. Tommy jerked back into his seat, the words slapping him across the face. He didn't expect that. His mood soured. Did Dream not learn how to control his bluntness after being alive for so long? You're glad. Dream nodded at him. I would have thought, you being the sick fuck you are, you'd enjoy this shit. The smug smile on Dream's lips molded into a frown. I don't enjoy watching my creation die and come back angrier and angrier, wishing for a premature death against destiny's wishes. Then why did you make me this way? Tommy asked, his voice rising. He picked up a playing piece from Dream's side. Why am I like this? Dream stayed silent, his mask focused on the playing piece in Tommy's hand. Oh, so you're quiet now? Tommy taunted, clenching the piece in his palm. Come on, Dream, you normally like it when I fight back. Don't pussy out now. Answer the question. His silence endured. Tommy slammed his fist onto the table, cracking the board. I've asked for centuries, and each time I get a cop-out answer. First it was a punishment you wanted me to suffer, then it was for me to learn a lesson. Which one is it, Dream? What is it now? Contrary to belief, Tommy, I do want you to figure out your myth in this life. Dream muttered. Tommy gripped harder on the playing piece. Sure you fucking do, he scoffed. But if I guessed it correctly, where would your main source of entertainment go? Who else would you torment for eternity? Maybe another child? Maybe you're arrogant to assume you are the only cursed one. Time stopped. The cold air burned his lungs. What? Tommy whispered. All this time, he thought he was alone in his struggles, burdened with the fact that no one in the world would ever understand what he experienced, and still continued to experience. Dream held his chained amulet around his neck, an action he did before he would disappear. No, repeat that, you coward! There are people like me out there? Dream's silence returned, mocking the panic in Tommy's body. Who else? Who else did you curse? I've said too much. Doubt settled on Tommy's shoulders. What if this was another trick? You may not believe me, but I'm telling the truth. I don't believe a single thing you say. Last time I trusted you, I fucking died. He could still remember the touch of Dream's arms wrapped around him, his whispers of support against his ears, his comfort that became deadly in a matter of seconds. And now I continue to die, over and over again, all because of you! Tommy hurled the playing piece at him, only for it to fly through Dream's body. He glanced down at the broken board game and picked up the remains, but the pieces evaporated behind his hands. Dream stared at him, his face paler than before. Tommy, fuck off and let me out, Dream. I've had enough of this shit. Gasping, Tommy woke up, with his hands stinging. He cursed under his breath and unclenched his fist, revealing bleeding fingernail indents on his palms. At least it was just his hands this time. He tried to sit up, but something weighted held his body down. He blinked the blurriness out of his vision and recognized that he was still in the living room. Phil and Techno were on their sofa, watching the TV. He must have fallen asleep down here. A weighted blanket covered his body. You all right, mate? Phil's voice was softer than usual. He sat up, his body tingling. It looked like you were having a nightmare. Yeah, something like that. Tommy mumbled, tired. What are you watching now? We stopped watching Avatar when you fell asleep. Now it's Bleach. A blonde man with a green and white striped bucket hat was on the TV screen. Great, another anime. And that's my cue to go to bed. Good night. Tommy shrugged off the weighted blanket, despite the relief it brought him, and made his way upstairs. He swore if he saw Dream again in his sleep, he was going to shove those Gnosis playing pieces up his fucking ass.